All right, we're beginning to turn down the monitoring audio. Whoops. Yeah, as I was saying, there he goes again. I keep verbal tics, I swear to God. So, let's get comfortable and settle in, grab a book, grab a drink, and let's see where we left off tonight, shall we? Welcome back. This is our third night of reading from Gaston Leroux's The Phantom of the Opera. This is a tremendously iconic story, something that most people have some sort of exposure to, whether it be the stage play, the musical, any of the theatrical or big screen adaptations, or even cameos in any sort of odd little bits of media. I distinctly remember the Phantom being referenced or being brought up through at least 2 or 3 cartoons when I was growing up. So this is something that is immersed in the public unconsciousness. Everyone knows the Phantom of the Opera. They may not know the story, they may not be familiar with the beats, but the concept is there. It's part of Western civilization at this point, honestly. And so, getting a chance to go back and read where it started. Well, not quite where it started, because we're not reading the French, because hell no. But close enough. Close enough. It's a tremendous pleasure. And I am so far very comfortable with this reading. It's very, very true. Well, I should say the other way around. The adaptations are true to form. The story beats are more or less the same. The themes are consistent, and if anything, the source, it suffers a little bit in pacing, but that's just because we're able to see more of the characters' motivations, the off-screen or off-stage events, the thoughts and ideas that are going on and going in and between the characters and their histories that you don't really have a chance to see in any other format than the book itself. But the high points are all there, and I can't really think of anything that's been dramatically changed. Some details here or there to make things flow a little bit better, but I mean, what sort of adaptation doesn't have that? So, yeah, exactly. This is one of the easiest ways for people to get into any sort of classical exposure. It's a great, great piece of fiction, and will live through the ages. I'm absolutely certain of that. So, when we left off last time, it's been a little bit now. We last read this on Friday last week. We've had, between special events and recovery from said special event, 12 hours was crazy, honestly. We are finally getting back to the Phantom of the Opera. And I think tonight we should probably get to just about the halfway mark, give or take a bit. But last time, we saw some iconic scenes. There was the dropping of the chandelier, the delve into Christine Daae's past, and the budding relationship with Leroux, and the stinting of that relationship. Yes, Z was a menace, an absolute unholy terror. And I'm going to need to restock my liquor cabinet with questionable choices if I'm going to keep up, honestly. Oh, that reminds me, I do need to update what tonight's drink is, because we are starting with a Cabernet. It has been a little bit since I went back to this. I've had a box on the kitchen counter for a while, and it's just been too damn hot. Honestly, you don't want a dry red wine when it's 80 degrees Fahrenheit. And that's partly on me. I keep my house a little too warm, but I'm also a cheapskate. And that comes with the territory. If you set the thermostat to about 75, 76, you save a lot of money on cooling. And yes, I am the old dad that gets grumpy with the thermostat. Don't touch my thermostat. I set it where I want it, or I let the smart thermostat set it where it belongs. And you know what? Yeah. But yeah, you're right. It is chilled white kind of weather, but it's finally stabilizing. It's a nice, balmy 72 in here right now, at least until the computer goes nuts. Although, with the side benefit of us just reading, the computer doesn't put out a ton of heat. So, nice. Yes, hello, Simba. You heard me talking, didn't you? Yes, I'm talking to the internet. Yes. But yeah, so luckily we're not putting out a ton of heat on the computer. So we can maintain with just a little bit of a ceiling fan action and it not suffer too much. And so, we can go back to the red. I'm happy for it. Alright, so that's our preamble for tonight. I think it's about high time we get back to our book, shall we? Well, he gets all sorts of persnickety because I spend all day at the computer working, and then I spend 4 nights of the week, a good chunk of the evenings, at the computer. So it's he's just watching out for me. Like you're at the desk too much. I can't negate that, but all right, so let's go ahead and shift over to our reading nook, and let's get started. Reacquainted with the Phantom of the Opera. Tonight we should have the Masquerade, which is a climactic turning point, at least in the stage play. It's right around the changing of the acts, actually, before intermission, so it must be a big deal. Let's see how it shows up originally. Alright, we're beginning tonight from chapter 9, at the masked ball. The envelope was covered with mud and unstamped. It bore the words, "To be handed to Monsieur le Vicomte Raoul de Cheny." With the address in pencil, it must have been flung out in the hope that a passerby would pick up the note and deliver it, which was what happened. The note had been picked up on the pavement of the Place de l'Opéra. Raoul read it over again with fevered eyes. No more was needed to revive his hope. The somber picture which he had for a moment imagined of a Christine forgetting her duty to herself made way for his original conception of an unfortunate, innocent child, the victim of imprudence and exaggerated sensibility. To what extent, at this time, was she really a victim? Whose prisoner was she? Into what whirlpool had she been dragged? He asked himself these questions with a cruel anguish. But even this pain seemed endurable beside the frenzy into which he was thrown at the thought of a lying and deceitful Christine. What had happened? What influence had she undergone? What monster had carried her off, and by what means? By what means, indeed? That of music. He knew Christine's story. After her father's death, she acquired a distaste of everything in life, including her art. She went through the conservatoire like a poor, soulless singing machine. And suddenly, She awoke, as though through the intervention of a god. The angel of music appeared upon the scene. She sang Margarita and Faust and triumphed. The angel of music. For 3 months, the angel of music had been giving Christine lessons. He was a punctual singing master. And now, he was taking her for drives in the bois. Roux's fingers clutched at his flesh, above his jealous heart. In his inexperience, he now asked himself with terror what game the girl was playing. Up to what point could an opera singer make a fool of a good-natured young man quite new to love? Oh, misery! Thus did Roux's thoughts fly from one extreme to the other. He no longer knew whether to pity Christine or to curse her, and he pitied and cursed her turn and turn about. At all events, he bought a white domino. The hour of the appointment came at last. With his face in a mask trimmed with long, thick lace, looking like a Pierrot in his white wrap, the Viscount thought himself very ridiculous. Men of the world do not go to the opera ball in fancy dress. It was absurd. One thought, however, consoled the Viscount. He would certainly never be recognized. This ball was an exceptional affair, given some time between Shrovetide, in honor of an anniversary of the birth of a famous draftsman. And it was expected to be much gayer, noisier, more bohemian than the ordinary masked ball. Oh, Queen. Numbers of artists had arranged to go, accompanied by a whole cohort of models and pupils, who, by midnight, began to create a tremendous din. Roux climbed the grand staircase at 5 minutes to 12. Did not linger to look at the motley dresses displayed all the way up the marble steps. One of the richest settings in the world, allowed no facetious mask to draw him into a war of wits, replied to no jests, and shook off the bold familiarity of a number of couples who had already become a trifle too gay. Crossing the big crush room and escaping from a mad whirl of... Don't be gauche. You don't use names here. He was afraid of losing her, after meeting her again in such strange circumstances. His grudge against her was gone. He no longer doubted that she had nothing to reproach herself with, however peculiar and inexplicable her... He ran away like a very madman, pursued by the jeers of the bystanders. He wanted to dart forward, forgetting Christine, but the black domino, who had also seemed to prey to some strange excitement, caught him by the arm and dragged him from the crush room, far from the mad crowd through which Red Death was stalking. The black domino kept on turning back, and apparently, on 2 occasions, Saul tried to overcome the girl's resistance by force, but she repelled him with a strength which he would not have suspected in her. He understood, or thought he understood, and at once lost his temper. "Who?" he repeated angrily. "Why, he, the man who hides behind that hideous mask of death! The evil genius of the churchyard at Perros, Red Death! In a word, madame," and he burst into tears. She allowed him to insult her. She thought of but one thing: to keep him from leaving the box. "You will beg my pardon one day for all those ugly words, Raoul. And when you do, I shall forgive you." He shook his head. "No, no, you have driven me mad when I think that I had only one object in life, to give my name to an opera wench. Raoul, can you, I shall die of shame. No, no, dear, live, said Christine's grave and changed voice. And goodbye. Goodbye, Raoul. The boy stepped forward, staggering as he went. He risked one more sarcasm. What to believe now? You seem to me quite sensible, Christine. You know what you are doing, and meanwhile, Mamma Valerius lies waiting for you at home and appealing to your good genius. Then he also went down among the crowd, hardly knowing what he was doing, with throbbing temples and an aching heart, and as he crossed the dancing floor, he asked if anybody had seen Red Death. Oh yes, everyone had seen Red Death, but Raoul could not find him. And at 2 o'clock in the morning, he turned down the passage behind the scenes that led to Christine Daae's dressing room. His footsteps took him to that room where he had first known suffering. He tapped at the door. There was no answer. He entered, as he had entered when he looked everywhere for the man's voice. The room was empty. A gas jet was burning, turned down low. He saw some writing paper on a little desk. He thought of writing to Christine, but he heard steps in the passage. He had only time to hide in the inner room, which was separated from the dressing room by a curtain. Christine entered, took off her mask with a wary movement, and flung it on the table. She sighed and let her pretty head fall into her two hands. What was she thinking of? Of Raoul? Oh, for Raoul heard her murmur, "Poor Eric." At first, he thought he must be mistaken. To begin with, he was persuaded that if anyone was to be pitied, it was he. Raoul. It would have been quite natural if she had said, "Poor Raoul," after what had happened between them, but, shaking her head, she repeated, "Poor Eric." Christine began to write. What had this Eric to do with Christine's sighs, and why was she pitying Eric when Raoul was so unhappy? Christine began to write, deliberately, calmly, and so placidly that Raoul, who was still trembling from the effects of the tragedy that separated them, was painfully impressed. What coolness, he said to himself. She wrote on, filling 2, 3, 4 sheets. Finally, she raised her head and hid the sheets in her bodice. She seemed to be listening. Raoul also listened. Whence came that strange sound, that distant rhythm? A faint singing seemed to issue from the walls. Yes, it was as though the walls themselves were singing. The song became plainer. The words were now distinguishable. He heard a voice, a very beautiful, very soft, very captivating voice. But for all its softness, it remained a male voice. The voice came nearer and nearer. It came through the wall. It approached, and now the voice was in the room in front of Christine. Christine rose and addressed the voice as though speaking to someone. "Here I am, Eric," she said. "I'm ready, but you are late." Raoul, peeping from behind the curtain, could not believe his eyes. It showed him nothing. Christine's face lit up. A smile of happiness appeared on her bloodless lips, a smile like that of sick people when they receive the first hope of recovery. The voice without a body went on singing, and certainly Raoul had never in his life heard anything more absolutely and heroically sweet, more gloriously insidious, more delicate, more powerful, in short, more irresistibly triumphant. He listened to it in a fever and he now began to understand how Christine Daae was able to appear one evening before the stupefied audience, with accents of a beauty hitherto unknown, of a superhuman exaltation, while doubtless still under the influence of the mysterious and invisible master. The voice was singing the wedding night song from Romeo and Juliet. Earl saw Christine stretch out her arms to the voice, as she had done in Perros churchyard, to the invisible violin playing the resurrection of Lazarus, and nothing could describe the passion with which the voice sang, "Fate links thee to me for ever and a day." I don't know the tune, I'm sorry. The strains went through Roll's heart, struggling against the charm that seemed to deprive him of all his will and all his energy and of almost all his lucidity at the moment when he needed them most. He succeeded in drawing back the curtain that hid him, and he walked to where Christine stood. She herself was moving to the back of the room, the whole wall of which was occupied by a great mirror that reflected her image. But not his, for he was just behind her and entirely covered by her. "Fate links thee to me for ever and a day." Christine walked toward her image in the glass, and the image came toward her. The two Christines, the real one and the reflection, ended by touching, and Rule put out his arms to clasp the two in one embrace, but by a sort of dazzling miracle that sent him staggering, Rule was suddenly flung back, while an icy blast swept over his face. He saw not 2, but 4, 8, 20 Christines spinning round him, laughing at him and fleeing so swiftly that he could not touch one of them. At last, everything stood still again, and he saw himself in the glass, but Christine had disappeared. He rushed up to the glass. He struck at the walls. Nobody! And meanwhile, the room still echoed the distant, passionate singing. "Fate links thee to me for ever and a day." Which way had Christine gone? Which way would she return? Would she return? Alas, had she not declared to him that everything was finished? And was the voice not repeating, "Fate links thee to me for ever and a day"? To me? To whom? Then, worn out, beaten, empty-brained, he sat down on the chair which Christine had just left. Like her, he let his head fall into his hands. When he raised it, the tears were streaming down his young cheeks, real, heavy tears like those which jealous children shed, tears that wept for a sorrow which was in no way fanciful, which is common to all the lovers on earth, and which he expressed aloud. "Who is Eric?" he said. All right, we have the masquerade and we had Christine's vanishing, all rolled into one. And, again, I'm impressed by all of the adaptations. Really, they all nailed it. This scene is spectacularly done. The lost in the mirrors, the maze of mirrors, vanished from her very dressing room, just whispered away. Rule saw it, the only witness, the only one to know that she was taken. Ensorcelled, enspelled, enthralled, and away she went. All right, let's continue on, and let's see what Chapter 10 has in store for us next. Forget the name of the man's voice. The day after, Christine had vanished before his eyes in a sort of dazzlement that still made him doubt the evidence of his senses. Monsieur le Vicomte de Cheny called to inquire at Mamma Valerius's. He came upon a charming picture. Christine herself was seated by the bedside of the old lady, who was sitting up against the pillows knitting. The pink and white had returned to the young girl's cheeks. The dark rings round her eyes had disappeared. Earl no longer recognized the tragic face of the day before. In the veil of melancholy over those adorable features, if the veil of melancholy over those adorable features had not still appeared to the young man as the last trace of the weird drama in whose toils that mysterious child was struggling, he could have believed that Christine was not its heroine at all. She rose, without showing any emotion, and offered him her hand. But Raoul's stupefaction was so great that he stood there dumbfounded, without a gesture, without a word. "Well, Monsieur de Cheny," exclaimed Mamma Valerius, "don't you know our Christine? Her good genius has sent her back to us." "Mamma!" the girl broke in promptly, with a deep blush mantled to her eyes. I thought, Mamma, that there was to be no more questions of that. You know there is no such thing as the angel of music." "But, child, he gave you lessons for 3 months." "Mamma, I've promised to explain everything to you one of these days, and I hope to do so, but you have promised me, until that day, to be silent, and to ask me no more questions whatever." "Provided that you promise never to leave me again. But have you promised that, Christine?" "Mamma, all this cannot interest Monsieur de Cheny." "On the contrary, mademoiselle," said the young man, in a voice which he tried to make firm and brave, but which still trembled. "Anything that concerns you interests me to an extent which perhaps you will one day understand. I do not deny that my surprise equals my pleasure at finding you with your adopted mother, and that, after what had happened between us yesterday, after what you said and what I was able to guess, I hardly expected to see you so soon. I should be the first to delight at your return, if you were not so bent on preserving a secrecy that may be fatal to you. And I have been your friend too long not to be alarmed. With Madame Valerius, at a disastrous adventure which will remain dangerous so long as we have not unraveled its threads, and of which you will certainly end by being the victim, Christine." At these words, Mamma Valerius tossed about in her bed. "What does this mean?" she cried. "Is Christine in danger?" "Yes, madame," said Raoul courageously, notwithstanding the signs which Christine made him. "My God!" exclaimed the good, simple old woman, gasping for breath. You must tell me everything, Christine. Why did you try to reassure me, and what danger is it, Monsieur de Cheny?" "An impostor is abusing her good faith." "Is the angel of music an impostor?" "She told you herself that there is no angel of music." "But then what is it, in heaven's name? You will be the death of me." "There is a terrible mystery about us, madame. Around you, around Christine, a mystery much more to be feared than any number of ghosts or genii." Mamma Valerius turned a terrified face to Christine, who had already run to her adopted mother and was holding her in her arms. Don't believe him, Mummy. Don't believe him," she repeated. "Then tell me that you will never leave me again," implored the widow. Christine was silent, and Raoul resumed. "That is what you must promise, Christine. It is the only thing that can reassure your mother and me. We will undertake not to ask you a single question about the past, if you promise us to remain under our protection in the future." "That is an understanding which I have not asked of you, and a promise which I refuse to make you," said the young girl haughtily. "I am mistress of my own actions, Monsieur de Cheny. You have no right to control them, and I will beg you to desist henceforth. As to what I have done during the last fortnight, there is only one man in the world who has the right to demand an account of me, my husband. Well, I have no husband, and I never mean to marry. She threw out her hands to emphasize her words, and Rule turned pale, not only because of the words which he had heard, but because he had caught sight of a plain gold ring on Christine's finger. You have no husband, and yet you wear a wedding ring. He tried to seize her hand, but she swiftly drew it back. That's a present, she said, blushing once more and vainly striving to hide her embarrassment. Christine, as you have no husband, that ring can have only been given by one who hopes to make you his wife. Why deceive us further? Why torture me still more? That ring is a promise, and that promise has been accepted. That's what I said, exclaimed the old lady. And what did she answer, madame? What I chose, said Christine, driven to exasperation. Don't you think, monsieur, that this cross-examination has lasted long enough? As far as I'm concerned... Rule was afraid to let her finish her speech. He interrupted her. I beg your pardon for speaking as I did, mademoiselle. You know the good intentions that make me meddle just now in matters which you no doubt think have nothing to do with me. But allow me to tell you what I have seen. I have seen more than you suspect, Christine, or what I thought I saw. For, to tell you the truth, I have sometimes been inclined to doubt the evidence of my eyes. Well, what did you see, sir? What think you saw? I saw your ecstasy at the sound of the voice, Christine. The voice that came from the wall of the next room to yours. Yes, your ecstasy. And that is what makes me alarmed on your behalf. You are under a very dangerous spell. Yet it seems that you are aware of the imposture, because you say today that there is no angel of music. In that case, Christine, why did you follow him that time? Why did you stand up with radiant features as though you were really hearing angels? It is a very dangerous voice, Christine, for I myself, when I heard it, was so much fascinated by it that you vanished before my eyes without my seeing which way you passed. Christine, Christine, in the name of heaven, in the name of your father, who is in heaven now, and who loved you so dearly, and who loved me too, Christine, tell us, tell your benefactress and me, to whom does that voice belong? If you do, we will save you in spite of yourself. Come, Christine, the name of the man who had the audacity to put a ring on your finger. Monsieur de Chilly, the girl declared coldly, you shall never know. Thereupon, seeing the hostility with which her ward had addressed the Viscount, Mamma Valerius suddenly took Christine's part. And, if she does love that man, Monsieur le Vicomte, even then, it is no business of yours. Alas, madame, Rule humbly replied, unable to restrain his tears. Alas, I believe that Christine really does love him. It is not only that which drives me to despair. What I am not certain of, madame, is that the man whom Christine loves is worthy of her love. It is for me to be the judge of that, monsieur, said Christine, looking Raoul angrily in the face. When a man, continued Raoul, adopts such romantic methods to entice a young girl's affections, the man must either be a villain or the girl a fool. Is that it? Christine! Raoul, why do you condemn a man whom you have never seen, whom no one knows, and about whom you yourself know nothing? Yes, Christine, yes. I at least know the name, and you thought to keep from me forever. The name of your angel of music, mademoiselle, is Eric. Christine at once betrayed herself. She turned as white as a sheet and stammered, Who told you? You yourself. How do you mean? By pitying him the other night. The night of the masked ball, when you went to your dressing room, did you not say, poor Eric? Well, Christine, there was a poor Raoul who overheard you. This is the second time that you have listened behind the door, Monsieur Descheny. I was not behind the door. I was in the dressing room, in the inner room, mademoiselle. Oh, unhappy man, moaned the girl, showing every sign of unspeakable terror. Unhappy man, do you want to be killed? Perhaps. Raoul uttered this perhaps with so much love and despair in his voice that Christine could not keep back a sob. She took his hands and looked at him with all the pure affection of which she was capable. Raoul, she said, forget the man's voice. I do not even remember its name. You must never try to fathom the mystery of the man's voice. Is the mystery so very terrible? There is no more awful mystery on this earth. Swear to me that you will make no attempt to find out, she insisted. Swear to me. You will never come to my dressing room unless I send for you. Then you promise to send for me sometimes, Christine? Promise. When? Tomorrow. Then I swear to do as you ask. He kissed her hands and went away, cursing Eric and resolving to be patient. All right, that brings us to the end of chapter 10. And I understand it's a matter of the times. It's a little bit more normal to be possessive, but Raoul kind of is coming off as a patronizing son of a bitch. Let's be real. Sure, he might have her best interests at heart. Sure, he might think he's on the right track, trying to protect her. Christine's a woman grown. Yeah, he still sucks. He's... The fact that he's the hero of the story is very evident that this is not a classic story all throughout. Like, yes, he's the virtuous heroess, the prince to come to the rescue, but in all of the adaptations and in this story in the original, he's not a very likable character. So, I think that's part of the charm of the Phantom of the Opera. It's not very often, particularly given the time, this was written quite a long time ago, that we see something that is so at once sympathetic and also condemning to the other. The Phantom is obviously the other. He's an outsider. He's not an upper crust aristocrat. He's not part of society. He's the outsider. He's the other. And everyone else we see, almost everyone that we've seen, except for like Madame Giry and Christine, have been painted in very unsympathetic lights. We aren't led to like Raoul. We aren't led to like the new opera managers. We're not led to like the diva. We're not led to like anybody. We're given a neutral view of the Phantom. Christine is held up as a modern-day saintess. But there's a lot of mixed feelings to go all about. So yeah, it's interesting, and I think that's part of why this story is so timeless. It could just be another Disney story of a Prince Charming coming in to rescue the damsel in distress, but it's not. Sure, that's part of it, but that's not the focus. That's not what is shown as a good outcome, even. So, let's go ahead and take a short break. We've got ads about to fire off. And when we return, we'll go ahead and continue from Chapter 11, Above the Trapdoors. All right, we are back. So, let's go ahead and, whoops, that wasn't intended to be a page turn. Let's go ahead and jump right back in, because this story is developing nicely. We're at the emotional, not climax, but the escalation point here. We're starting to see relationships develop, heartstrings tugged, and no small amount of manipulation. So, Chapter 11. Above the Trapdoors. The next day, he saw her at the opera. she was still wearing the plain gold ring. She was gentle and kind to him. She talked to him of the plans which he was forming, of his future, of his career. He told her that the date of the polar expedition had been put forward, that he would leave France in 3 weeks, or a month at latest. She suggested almost gaily that he must look upon the voyage with delight, as a stage toward his coming fame. And he replied that fame without love was no attraction in his eyes. She treated him as a child whose sorrows were only short-lived. "How can you speak so lightly of such serious things?" he asked. "Perhaps we shall never see each other again. I may die during that expedition." "Or I," she said simply. She no longer smiled or jested. She seemed to be thinking of some new thing that had entered her mind for the first time. Her eyes were all aglow with it. "What are you thinking of, Christine?" "I am thinking that we shall not see each other again." "And does that make you so radiant?" "And that, in a month, we shall have to say goodbye forever." "Unless, Christine, we pledge our faith and wait for each other forever." She put her hand on his mouth. "Hush, Raoul. You know there is no question of that. And we shall never be married. That is understood." She seemed suddenly almost unable to contain an overpowering gaiety. She clapped her hands with childish glee. Raoul stared at her in amazement. But, she continued, holding out her 2 hands to Raoul, or rather, giving them to him, as though she had suddenly resolved to make him a present of them. If we cannot be married, we can be engaged. Nobody will know but ourselves, Raoul. There have been plenty of secret marriages. Why not a secret engagement? We're engaged, dear, for a month. In a month, you will go away, and I can be happy at the thought of that month all my life long." She was enchanted with her inspiration. Then she became serious again. "This," she said, "is a happiness that will harm no one." Raoul jumped at the idea. He bowed to Christine and said, "Mademoiselle, I have the honor to ask for your hand." "Why, you have both of them already, my dear betrothed. Oh, Raoul, how happy we shall be! We must play at being engaged all day long." It was the prettiest game in the world, and they enjoyed it like the children that they were. The wonderful speeches they made to each other, and the eternal vows they exchanged. They played at hearts as other children might play at ball, only as it was really their 2 hearts that they flung to and fro. They had to be very, very handy to catch them, each time, without hurting them. One day, about a week after the game began, Raoul's heart was badly hurt, and he stopped playing and uttered these wild words: "I shan't go to the North Pole!" Christine, who, in her innocence, had not dreamed of such a possibility, suddenly discovered the danger of the game, and reproached herself bitterly. She did not say a word in reply to Raoul's remark, and went straight home. This happened in the afternoon, in the singer's dressing room, where they met every day, and where they amused themselves by dining on 3 biscuits, 2 glasses of port, and a bunch of violets. In the evening she did not sing, and he did not receive his usual letter, though they had arranged to write to each other daily during that month. The next morning he ran off to Mamma Valerius, who told him that Christine had gone away for 2 days. She'd left at 5 o'clock the day before. Raoul was distracted. He hated Mamma Valerius for giving him such news as that with such stupefying calmness. He tried to sound her, but the old lady obviously knew nothing. Christine returned on the following day. She returned in triumph, She renewed her extraordinary success of the gala performance. Since the adventure of the toad, Carlotta had not been able to appear on the stage. The terror of a fresh quack filled her heart and deprived her of all her power of singing. And the theater that had witnessed her incomprehensible disgrace had become odious to her. She contrived to cancel her contract. Di was offered the vacant place for the time. She received thunders of applause in the fucking French. Damn it. I'm getting better, but some words just nope, no chance. In the weave? Yeah. Probably. The Viscount, who of course was present, was the only one to suffer on hearing the 1,000 echoes of this fresh triumph, for Christine still wore her plain gold ring. A distant voice whispered in the young man's ear, "She is wearing the ring again tonight, and you did not give it to her. She gave her soul again tonight, and did not give it to you. If she will not tell you what she was been doing the past 2 days, you must go and ask Eric." He ran behind the scenes and placed himself in her way. She saw him, for her eyes were looking for him. She said, "Quick, quick, come!" as she dragged him to her dressing room. Raoul at once threw himself on his knees before her. He swore to her that he would go, and he entreated her never again to withhold a single hour of the ideal happiness which she had promised him. She let her tears flow. They kissed like a despairing brother and sister who have been smitten with a common loss, and who meet to mourn a dead parent. Suddenly, she snatched herself from the young man's soft and timid embrace, seemed to listen to something, and with a quick gesture pointed to the door. When he was on the threshold, she said, in so low a voice that the Viscount guessed rather than heard her words, "Tomorrow, my dear betrothed, and be happy, Raoul. I sang for you tonight." He returned the next day, but those 2 days of absence had broken the charm of their delightful make-believe. They looked at each other in the dressing room with their sad eyes without exchanging a word. Raoul had to restrain himself not to cry out, "I am jealous! I am jealous! I am jealous!" But she heard him all the same. Then she said, "Come for a walk, dear. The air will do you good." Raoul thought that she would propose a stroll in the country, far from that building which he detested as a prison, whose jailer he could feel walking within the walls, the jailer Eric. But she took him to the stage and made him sit on the wooden curb of a well, in the doubtful peace and coolness of a first scene, set for the evening's performance. On another day, she wandered with him, hand in hand, along the deserted paths of a garden whose creepers had been cut out by a decorator's skillful hands. It was as though the real sky, the real flowers, the real earth were forbidden her for all time, and she condemned to breathe no other air than that of the theater. An occasional fireman passed, watching over their melancholy idol from afar. She would drag him up above the clouds, in the magnificent disorder of the grid, where she loved to make him giddy by running in front of him along the frail bridges, among the thousands of ropes fastened to the pulleys, the windlasses, the rollers, in the midst of a regular forest of yards and masts. If he hesitated, she said, with an adorable pout of her lips, "You, a sailor!" And then they returned to terra firma. That is to say, to some passage that led them to the little girl's dancing school, where brats between 6 and 10 were practicing their steps. in the hope of becoming great dancers one day, covered with diamonds. Meanwhile, Christine gave them sweets instead. So I know this is all sort of a childish flirtation they're having, but I will say there is a spectacular charm to wandering around a theater with lights down, curtains closed, and just exploring. The catwalks are fantastic. The wings are mysterious. The pulleys and the ropes, the way it all comes together is just really cool. So I will criticize Christine Rule for legitimate reasons, but for this, theaters are cool. Just do it sometime. Find an excuse. Whether it be a civic theater or something, just go explore. It's fun. All right. She took him to the wardrobe and property rooms, took him all over her empire, which was artificial, but immense, covering 17 stories from the ground floor to the roof and inhabited by an army of subjects. She moved among them like a popular queen, encouraging them in their labors, sitting down in the workshops, giving words of advice to the workmen whose hands hesitated to cut into the rich stuffs that were to clothe heroes. There were inhabitants of that country who practiced every trade. There were cobblers, there were goldsmiths. All had learned to know her and to love her. She always interested herself in all their troubles and all their little hobbies. She knew unsuspected corners that were secretly occupied by little old couples. She knocked at their door and introduced Raoul to them as a Prince Charming who had asked for her hand. And the two of them, sitting on some worm-eaten property, would listen to the legends of the opera, even as, in their childhood, they had listened to the old Breton tales. Those old people remembered nothing outside the opera. They had lived there for years without number. Past managements had forgotten them. Palace revolutions had taken no notice of them. The history of France had run its course unknown to them. Nobody recollected their existence. Yep, Simba joined us. He wandered in. The precious days sped in this way, and Raoul and Christine, by affecting excessive interest in outside matters, strove awkwardly to hide from each other the one thought of their hearts. One fact was certain, that Christine, who until then had shown herself the stronger of the two, became suddenly inexpressively nervous. When, on their expeditions, she would start running without reason, or else suddenly stop, and her hand, turning ice cold in a moment. Oh, hang on, we're dropping some frames here. And it's actually getting some stuttering. Hang tight, hang tight. YouTube is just not having a good day, whether it be downstream or up, it seems. Alright, there we're back. Oh, hey, I didn't notice you there at first, Marul and Oki. Thanks for joining us over on YouTube. We don't get a whole lot of chatters on the YouTube side. Thanks for stopping in, and I will always encourage anybody to pick up reading. And there's no rush. You take it at your own pace. If it takes you a year to finish a book, it's still a year well spent. Or you can churn through them. That's going fast is fine too. Yeah, we've been lucky lately with our connection being good. So an occasional day here and there is not the end of the world, where it's a little slow, little chunky. All right, now where were we? Oh yeah. When on their expeditions, she would start running without reason, or else suddenly stop, and her hand, turning ice cold in a moment, would hold the young man back. Sometimes her eyes seemed to pursue imaginary shadows. She cried, "This way, and this way, and this way," laughing a breathless laugh that often ended in tears. Then Rule tried to speak, to question her, in spite of his promises. But even before he had worded his question, she answered feverishly, "Nothing. I swear, it is nothing." Once, when they were passing before an open trapdoor on the stage, Rule stopped over the dark cavity. "You have shown me over the upper part of your empire, Christine, but there are strange stories told of the lower part. Shall we go down?" She caught him in her arms, as though she feared to see him disappear down the black hole, and, in a trembling voice, whispered, "Never! I will not have you go there. Besides, it's not mine. Everything that is underground belongs to him." Raoul looked her in the eyes and said roughly, "So, he lives down there, does he?" I never said so." "Who told you a thing like that? Come away. Sometimes I wonder if you are quite sane, Raoul. You always take things in such an impossible way. Come along. Come." It's hard to. Not many times I've not read the novelization, well, the original Phantom of the Opera before. But the characters do click, and depending on where you drop in on the story, you have the difficulty of dropping in the middle. Oh, yeah. If you do have the chance to see it live in theater, I cannot recommend it enough. It's so much fun. But even the recordings of the screenplays, or even the film adaptation, aside from some casting choices, are fantastic. One of my favorites. So, wholeheartedly recommend. And she literally dragged him away. He was obstinate and wanted to remain by the trapdoor. That hole attracted him. Is it a hole made for him? Sorry. Don't let Junji Ito out. Do not. Suddenly, the trapdoor was closed, and so quickly that they did not even see the hand that worked it, and they remained quite dazed. Perhaps he was there, Raoul said at last. She shrugged her shoulders, but did not seem easy. No, it was the trapdoor shutters. They must do something now. Something, you know? They open and shut the trapdoors without any particular reason. It's like the door shutters. They must spend their time somehow. But suppose it were he, Christine. No, he has shut himself up. He's working. Oh, really? He's working, is he? Yes, and he can't open and shut the trapdoors and work at the same time. She shivered. What is he working at? Oh, something terrible. But all the better for us. When he's working at that, he sees nothing. He does not eat, drink, or breathe for days and nights at a time. He becomes a living dead man, and has no time to amuse himself with the trapdoors. She shivered again. She was still holding him in her arms. Then she sighed and said in her turn, Suppose it were he? Are you afraid of him? No, of course not, she said. For all that, of the next day and the following days, Christine was careful to avoid the trapdoors. Her agitation only increased as the hours passed. At last, one afternoon, she arrived very late, with her face so desperately pale and her eyes so desperately red that Raoul resolved to go to all lengths, including that which he foreshadowed when he blurted out that he would not go on the North Pole expedition unless she first told him the secret of the man's voice. Hush, in heaven's name! Suppose he heard you. You unfortunate Raoul. and Christine's eyes stared wildly at everything around her. "I will remove you from his power, Christine. I swear it. And you shall not think of him any more." "Is it possible?" She allowed herself this doubt, which was an encouragement, while dragging the young man up to the topmost floor of the theater. Far, very far from the trapdoors. "I shall hide you in some unknown corner of the world where he cannot come to look for you. You will be safe. And then I shall go away, as you have sworn never to marry." Christine seized Leroux's hands and squeezed them with incredible rapture. But suddenly, becoming alarmed again, she turned away her head. "Higher," was all she said. "Higher still!" And she dragged him up toward the summit. He had a difficulty in following her. They were soon under the very roof in the maze of timberwork. They slipped through the buttresses, the rafters, the joists. They ran from beam to beam as they might have run from tree to tree in a forest. And despite the care which she took to look behind her at every moment, she failed to see a shadow, which followed her like her own shadow, which stopped when she stopped, which started again when she did, and which made no more noise than a well-conducted shadow should. As for Leroux, he saw nothing either, for when he had Christine in front of him, nothing interested him that happened behind. All right, that brings us to the end of Chapter 11, and the play romance between Christine and Leroux, the make-believe with consequences, is heightening. He's threatened to stay, and she's wavering. She wants to protect him. Everything she does is trying to keep him out of harm's way, away from the Phantom, away from Eric, away from the voice. But there's something lurking, something behind. Oh, hey, thanks for following on Twitch side, too. And thank you very much, because I will say, that just bumped us up to 70 followers on Twitch. That was our most recent goal. So thanks for joining us, and I do hope so very much that you enjoy your time here. We've got a pretty small community, mostly just listening in, some book lovers, we joke that this is our old men's book club, Akamos and I around here, but all are welcome. Everybody's welcome, and you can be as active or as lurky as you like. I'm in it for the love of the game. We're just here for the books and a little bit of chat here and there. So, welcome. Thanks for joining us, and I hope you enjoy your stay. All right, we've got time for another probably 2 or 3 chapters tonight. Hey, I appreciate that. I appreciate that a lot. We keep it relatively low key. Shockingly, a reading stream is chill. It's a small niche. Readers on Twitch, there's not a ton of us, and from what I've seen, most tend to be in the smaller side, and that's fine. It keeps it cozy. But would I be averse to some growth? No, not at all. But this is fine. I've got a 9 to 5. Yeah, and I do try, and that's part of why I only raid over to readers, because it's a small community of readers and writers on Twitch, especially because they've combined readers and writers. So whenever I raid, I always try and raid into a fellow reader stream, sort of share like our communities and help discovery. I found some great people that way, and I very much am happy to aid in discovery as we go along. So, once again, thanks and welcome. All right, let's go ahead and get back to our reading, because I would like to see if we can get to about 45% tonight. We'll see. Yeah, Twitch can be a very scary place in some places. But we're lucky. I think in the reader side, it's generally overwhelmingly chill. We don't have toxic personalities. We don't really have a whole lot of anything. It's great. It's great. Only got back into reading just chatting streams after you stockpiled a few hundred books. I get that vibe. My personal collection has overflowed from my primary bookshelf and into the living room bookshelf and into the office bookshelf. It's a disease. There's something about, like, I really enjoy reading digital. My oldest, if we're talking like when it was written, I've got a copy of the Iliad that is all sorts of old. The Bhagavad Gita I've got hanging around. If we're talking like actual physically oldest, probably my dad's copy of the original Dune. That was that one is part of what got me into things. I inherited most of his collection, and that's one that really was fun and got me hooked in a lot of stuff. Sci-fi is a great love of mine, and Dune is one of the best. Although, to be honest, Dune is more poli-sci with spaceships than actual sci-fi, but that's a conversation for another day. Okay. That would be cool. First printing of Dracula? Holy moly. In 1880 for like a physical book is crazy. That's a centerpiece of a collection. Oh, Robert Burns. I don't know if we've read Robert Burns. We read Walt Whitman was it a month or two ago? So every once in a while we'll get into poetry. And oh yeah, we read it. We did Whitman for Pride Month. So it was about a month and a half back. So like I said, we don't do a whole lot of poetry. Usually we're in novel format around here. But Whitman was a breath of fresh air. And poetry in general can be fantastic. All right, let's try and get it in chapter. I enjoy the chat, and this is fun, but I need to pretend that I'm on task. All right, chapter 12, Apollo's Lyre. On this way, they reached the roof. Christine tripped over it as lightly as a swallow. Their eyes swept the empty space between the three domes and the triangular pediment. She breathed freely over Paris, the whole valley of which was seen at work below. She called Raoul to come quite close to her, and they walked side by side along the zinc streets. In the leaden avenues, they looked at their twin shapes in the huge tanks full of stagnant water, where, in the hot weather, the little boys of the ballet, a score or so, learned to swim and dive. The shadow had followed behind them, clinging to their steps, and the two children little suspected its presence when they at last sat down, trustingly, under the mighty protection of Apollo, who, with a great bronze gesture, lifted his huge lyre to the heart of a crimson sky. It was a gorgeous spring evening. Clouds, which had just received their gossamer robe of gold and purple from the setting sun, drifted slowly by, and Christine said to Raoul, "Soon we shall go farther, and faster than the clouds, to the end of the world, and then you will leave me, Raoul. But if, when the moment comes for you to take me away, I refuse to go with you, you must carry me off by force." Are you afraid that you will change your mind, Christine? I don't know, she said, shaking her head in odd fashion. He is a demon! And she shivered and nestled in his arms with a moan. I am afraid now of going back to live with him in the ground. What compels you to go back, Christine? If I do not go back to him, terrible misfortunes may happen. But I can't do it. I can't do it. I know one ought to be sorry for people who live underground, but he's too horrible. And yet, the time is at hand. I have only a day left, and if I do not go, he will come and fetch me with his voice. He will drag me with him underground and go on his knees before me with his death's head. And he will tell me that he loves me, and he will cry, oh, those tears, Raoul, those tears, in the two black eye sockets of the death's head. I cannot see those tears flow again. She wrung her hands in anguish, while Raoul pressed her to his heart. Sorry, look down at chat. That is a vibe. Not lending books. As much as I love to spread good books around, I lent out my first edition signed copy of A Dance with Dragons, the last written copy of Song of Ice and Fire, George R. R. Martin. 10 years ago, I lent it out, and it was not returned. That stings. That stings. Ah. But on the bright side, it's very likely that there won't be any more of those written. So, meh. my affection for the series has waned as the years have gone in between installments. I have the same feelings towards things like Name of the Wind. But yes, gifts, great. Lending, leave book lending to the library. Oh, hey, Saley, welcome. And yes, we are almost halfway through Phantom of the Opera. I've not read this before. I've seen it on stage and on screen, but I'm continually impressed by how great the original is and how true to the original all of the adaptations are. The story beats are the same. The flow of the narrative, the emotion on the characters, the screenwriters and stage adapters did a phenomenal job. I do not. I've been meaning to make one. I really should. We've been going for about 1.5 years now, so it's probably about time, isn't it? Yes, the chandelier was excellently done. We saw that toward the end of last time's reading. It was great. Did drop right on one unfortunate woman's head. Oh, cool. I might toss you a DM over on Bluesky. I see you're active there all the time, and I appreciate all the reposts. So I'd be happy to get a conversation going. What's one unfortunate woman in this book? Just add them to the pile. Add them to the pile of unfortunate women in this book. They're everywhere. There are so many unfortunates. Oh, let's see. Where did I leave off? Chat's a lot more active than usual today, and I'm getting distracted. Not complaining. This is a fun problem to have. Okay. I think it was just at the top of the page. Yeah, okay. She wrung her hands in anguish, while Raoul pressed her to his heart. No, No, you shall never again hear him tell you that he loves you. You shall not see his tears. Let us fly, Christine. Let us fly at once. And he tried to drag her away then and there, but she stopped him. No, no, she said, shaking her head sadly. Not now. It would be too cruel. Let him hear me sing tomorrow evening, and then we will go away. You must come and fetch me in my dressing room at midnight exactly. He will then be waiting for me in the dining room, by the lake. We shall be free, and you shall take me away. You must promise me that, Raoul, even if I refuse, for I feel that if I go back this time, I shall perhaps never return. And so... And she gave a sigh, to which it seemed to her that another sigh behind her replied. Didn't you hear? Her teeth chattered. No, said Raoul. I heard nothing. It is too terrible, she confessed, to be always trembling like this. And yet, we run no danger here. We're at home, in the sky, in the open air, in the light. The sun is flaming. The night birds cannot bear to look at the sun. I've never seen him by daylight. It must be awful. Oh, the first time I saw him, I felt that he was going to die. Why? Asked Raoul, really frightened at the aspect with which this strange confidence was taking. Because I had seen him! This time, Raoul and Christine turned round at the same time. There's someone in pain, said Raoul. Perhaps someone has been hurt. Did you hear? I can't say, Christine confessed. Even when he is not there, my ears are full of his sighs. Still, if you heard... They stood up and looked around them. They were quite alone on the immense lead roof. They sat down again, and Raoul said, Tell me how you saw him first. I had heard him for 3 months without seeing him. The first time I heard it, I thought, as you did, that adorable voice was singing in another room. I went out and looked everywhere. But as you know, Raoul, my dressing room is very much by itself, and I could not find the voice outside my room, whereas it went on steadily inside. And it not only sang, but it spoke to me and answered my questions, like a real man's voice, with this difference, that it was as beautiful as the voice of an angel. I had never got the angel of music whom my poor father had promised to send me as soon as he was dead. I really think that Mamma Valerius was a little bit to blame. I told her about it, and she at once said, It must be the angel. At any rate, you can do no harm by asking him. I did so, and the man's voice replied that yes, it was the angel's voice, the voice which I was expecting, which my father had promised. From that time onward, the voice and I became great friends. It asked leave to give me lessons every day. I agreed and never failed to keep the appointment which it gave me in my dressing room. You have no idea, when you have heard the voice, of what those lessons were like. No, I have no idea, said Raoul. What was your accompaniment? We were accompanied by a music which I do not know. It was behind the wall and wonderfully accurate. The voice seemed to understand mine exactly, to know precisely where my father had left off teaching me. In a few weeks' time, I hardly knew myself when I sang. I was even frightened. I seemed to dread a sort of witchcraft behind it. But Mamma Valerius reassured me. She said that she knew I was much too simple a girl to give the devil a hold on me. My progress, by the voice's own order, was kept a secret between the voice, Mamma Valerius, and myself. It was a curious thing. But outside the dressing room, I sang with my ordinary, everyday voice. and nobody noticed anything. I did all that the voice asked. It said, "Wait and see. We shall astonish Paris." And I waited, and lived on in a sort of ecstatic dream. It was then that I saw you, the first time one evening in the house, and I was so glad that I never thought of concealing my delight when I reached my dressing room. Unfortunately, the voice was there before me, and soon noticed by my air that something had happened. It asked what was the matter, and I saw no reason for keeping our story secret or concealing the place which you fill in my heart. Then the voice was silent. I called to it, but it did not reply. I begged and entreated him, but in vain. I was terrified, lest it had gone for good. I wished to heaven it had, dear. That night, I went home in a desperate condition. I told Mamma Valerius, who said, "Why, of course, the voice is jealous." And that, dear, first revealed to me that I loved you. Christine stopped and laid her head on Raoul's shoulder. They sat like that for a moment in silence, and they did not perceive the movement at a few steps from them of the creeping shadow of the two great black wings, a shadow that came along the roof so near them that it could have stifled them by closing over them. The next day, Christine continued with a sigh, I went back to my dressing room in a very pensive frame of mind. The voice was there, spoke to me with great sadness, and told me plainly that if I must bestow my heart on earth, there was nothing for the voice to do but to go back to heaven. It said this with such an accent of human sorrow that I ought then and there to have suspected and begun to believe that I was the victim of my deluded senses. But my faith in the voice, with which the memory of my father was so closely intermingled, remained undisturbed. I feared nothing so much as that I might never hear it again. I had thought about my love for you, and realized all the useless danger of it. And I did not even know if you remembered me. Whatever happened, your position in society forbade me to contemplate the possibility of ever marrying you. I swore to the voice that you were no more than a brother to me, nor ever would be, and that my heart was incapable of any earthly love. And that, dear, was why I refused to recognize or see you when I met you on the stage or in the passages. Meanwhile, the hours during which the voice taught me were spent in a divine frenzy, until, at last, the voice said to me, "You could now, Christine Daae, give to men a little of the music of heaven." I don't know how it was that Carlotta did not come to the theatre that night, nor why I was called upon to sing in her stead. But I sang with a rapture I had never known before, and I felt for a moment as if my soul were leaving my body. "Oh, Christine," said Raoul, "my heart quivered that night at every accent of your voice. I saw the tears stream down your cheeks, and I wept with you. How could you sing like that while crying?" "I felt myself fainting," said Christine. "I closed my eyes. When I opened them, you were by my side. But the voice was there also. Raoul, I was afraid for your sake, and again I would not recognize you, and began to laugh when you reminded me that you had picked up my scarf in the sea. Alas, there is no deceiving the voice. The voice recognized you, and the voice was jealous. It said that if I did not love you, I would not avoid you, but treat you like any other old friend. It made me scene upon scene. At last, I said to the voice, 'That will do. I am going to Paris tomorrow to pray on my father's grave, and I shall ask Monsieur Raoul de Chagny to go with me.' 'Do as you please,' replied the voice, 'but I shall be at Paris too, for I am wherever you are, Christine, and if you are still worthy of me, If you've not lied to me, I will play you the resurrection of Lazarus on the stroke of midnight, on your father's tomb, and on your father's violin. That, dear, was how I came to write you the letter that brought you to peril. How could I have been so beguiled? How was it when I saw the personal, selfish point of view of the voice that I did not suspect some impostor? Alas, I was no longer mistress of myself. I had become his thing. But after all, cried Raoul, you soon came to know the truth. Why did you not at once rid yourself of that abominable nightmare? Know the truth, Raoul? Rid myself of that nightmare? My poor boy, I was not caught in the nightmare until the day when I learned the truth. Pity me, Raoul, pity me. You remember the terrible evening when Carlotta thought that she had been turned into a toad on the stage, and when the house was suddenly plunged in darkness through the chandelier crashing to the floor? There were killed and wounded that night, and the whole theatre rang with terrified screams. My first thought was for you, and the voice. I was at once easy where you were concerned, for I had seen you in your brother's box, and I knew that you were not in danger. The voice had told me that it would be at the performance. I was really afraid for it. Just as if it had been an ordinary person who was capable of dying, I thought to myself. The chandelier may have come down upon the voice. I was then on the stage, and was nearly running into the house to look for the voice among the killed and wounded, when I thought that, if the voice was safe, it would be sure to be in my dressing room, and I rushed to my room. The voice was not there. I locked my door, and with tears in my eyes besought it, if it was still alive, to manifest itself to me. The voice did not reply. But suddenly, I heard a long, beautiful wail, which I knew well. It is the plaint of Lazarus, when, at the sound of the Redeemer's voice, he begins to open his eyes and see the light of day. It was the music which you and I, Raoul, heard at peril. And then the voice began to sing the leading phrase, "And believe in me, whoso believes in me shall live. Walk, whoso hath believed in me shall never die." I cannot tell you the effect which that music had upon me. It seemed to command me, personally, to stand up and come to it. It retreated, and I followed. Come and believe in me. I believed in it. I came, and this was the extraordinary thing. My dressing room, as I moved, seemed to lengthen out. Evidently, it must have been an effect of mirrors, for I had the mirror in front of me, and suddenly I was outside the room, without knowing how. What? Without knowing how? Christine, you really must stop dreaming. Raoul, please. Brother man, my expectations are not terribly high, but please. I was not dreaming, sir. I was not dreaming, dear. I was outside my room, without knowing how. You, who saw me disappear from my room one evening, may be able to explain it. But I cannot. I can only tell you that, suddenly, there was no mirror before me, and no dressing room. I was in a dark passage. I was frightened, and I cried out. It was quite dark, but for a faint red glimmer at a distant corner of the wall. I cried out. My voice was the only sound, for the singing and the violin had stopped, and suddenly a hand was laid on mine, or rather, a stone-cold, bony thing that seized my wrist and did not let go. I cried out again. An arm took me round the waist and supported me. I struggled for a little while and then gave up the attempt. I was dragged toward the little red light. And then I saw that I was in the hands of a man, wrapped in a large cloak and wearing a mask that hid his whole face. I made one last effort. My limbs stiffened, my mouth opened to a scream, but a hand closed it, a hand which I felt on my lips, my skin, a hand that smelt of death, and I fainted away. When I opened my eyes, we were still surrounded by darkness. A lantern standing on the ground showed a bubbling well. The water splashing from the well disappeared almost at once under the floor on which I was lying. With my head on the knee of the man in the black cloak and the black mask, he was bathing my temples and his hands smelt of death. I tried to push them away and asked, "Who are you? Where is the voice?" His only answer was a sigh. Suddenly, a hot breath passed over my face, and I perceived a white shape beside the man's black shape in the darkness. The black shape lifted me onto the white shape. A glad name greeted me, my astounded ears, and I murmured, "Caesar." The animal quivered. Raoul, I was lying half back on a saddle, and I had recognized the white horse out of the Profeta, which I had so often fed with sugar and sweets. I remembered that one evening there was a rumor in the theatre that the horse disappeared, and that it had been stolen by the opera ghost. I believed in the voice, but had never believed in the ghost. Now, however, I began to wonder, shiver, whether I was the ghost's prisoner. I called upon the voice to help me, for I should never have imagined that the voice and the ghost were one. You have heard about the opera ghost, have you not, Raoul? Yes, but tell me, what happened when you were on the white horse of the Profeta? I made no movement and let myself go. The black shape held me up, and I made no effort to escape. A curious feeling of peacefulness came over me, and I thought that I must be under the influence of some cordial. I had the full command of my senses, and my eyes became used to the darkness, which was lit here and there by fitful gleams. I calculated that we were in a narrow circular gallery, probably running all round the opera, which is immense underground. I had once been down and into those cellars. It stopped at the third floor, though there were two lower still, large enough to hold a town. But the figures of which I'd caught sight had made me run away. What demons down there, quite black, standing in front of boilers. And they wield shovels and pitchforks and poke up fires and stir up flames. If you come too near them, they frighten you by suddenly opening the red mouth of their furnaces. Well, Caesar was quietly carrying me on his back. I saw those black demons in the distance, looking quite small. In front of the red fires of their furnaces, they came into sight, disappeared, and came into sight again. As we went on our winding way, at last, they disappeared altogether. The shape was still holding me up, and Caesar walked on, unled and sure-footed. I could not tell you even approximately how long this ride lasted. I only know that we seemed to turn, and often went down a spiral stair into the very heart of the earth. Even then, it may be that my head was turning, but I don't think so. No, my mind was quite clear. At last, Caesar raised his nostrils, sniffed the air, and quickened his pace a little. I felt a moistness in the air, and Caesar stopped. The darkness had lifted. A sort of bluey light surrounded us. We were on the edge of a lake, whose leaden waters stretched into the distance, into the darkness. But the blue light lit up the bank, and I saw a little boat fastened to an iron ring on the wharf. A boat! Yes, but I knew that all that it existed, and that there was nothing supernatural about that underground lake and boat. But think, the exceptional conditions in which I arrived upon that shore. I don't know whether the effects of the cordial had worn off when the man's shape lifted me into the boat, but my terror began all again. My gruesome escort must have noticed it, for he sent Caesar back, and I heard his hooves trampling up a staircase while the man jumped into the boat, untied the rope that held it, and seized the oars. He rolled with a quick, powerful stroke, and his eyes under the mask never left me. We slipped across the noiseless water, in the bluey light which I told you of. Then we were in the dark again, and we touched shore, and I was once more taken up in the man's arms. I cried aloud, and then suddenly I was silent, dazed by the light. Yes, a dazzling light in the midst of which I had been put down. I sprang to my feet. It was in the middle of a drawing room that seemed to me to be decorated, adorned, and furnished with nothing but flowers. Flowers both magnificent and stupid because of the silk ribbons that tied them to baskets, like those which they sell in the shops on the boulevards. They were much too civilized flowers, like those which I used to find in my dressing room after a first night. And in the midst of all these flowers stood the black shape of the man in the mask, with arms crossed, and he said, "Don't be afraid, Christine. You are in no danger." It was the voice! My anger equaled my amazement. I rushed at the mask and tried to snatch it away so as to see the face of the voice. The man said, "You are in no danger, so long as you do not touch the mask." And taking me gently by the wrist, he forced me into a chair, and then went down on his knees before me and said nothing more. His humility gave me back some of my courage, and the light restored me to the realities of life. However extraordinary the adventure might be, I was now surrounded by mortal, visible, tangible things. The furniture, the hangings. Oh, hi, Sydney, thank you. But tangible things, where were we? The furniture, the hangings, the candles, the vases, and the very flowers in their baskets, of which I could almost have told whence they came and what they cost, were bound to confine my imagination to the limits of a drawing room quite as commonplace as any that, at least, had the excuse of not being in the cellars of the opera. I had no doubt to do with a terrible, eccentric person who, in some mysterious fashion, had succeeded in taking up his abode there, under the opera house, 5 stories below the level of the ground, and the voice, which I had recognized under the mask, was on its knees before me. It was a man! And I began to cry. The man, still kneeling, must have understood the cause of my tears, for he said, "It is true, Christine. I am not an angel, nor a genius, nor a ghost. I am Eric." Christine's narrative was again interrupted. An echo behind them seemed to repeat the word, Eric. What echo? They both turned round and saw that night had fallen. Raoul made a movement as though to rise, but Christine kept him beside her. "Don't go," she said. "I want you to know everything. Here!" "But why here, Christine? I am afraid of your catching cold." "We have nothing to fear, except the trapdoors, dear. And here we are miles away from the trapdoors, and I am not allowed to see you outside the theatre. This is not the time to annoy him. We must not arouse his suspicion." Christine, something tells me that we are wrong to wait till tomorrow evening, and that we ought to fly at once. I tell you that if he does not hear me sing tomorrow, it will cause him infinite pain. It is difficult not to cause him pain and yet escape him for good, from him for good. You are right in that, Raoul. For certainly he will die of my flight. And she added, in a dull voice, but then it counts both ways, for we risk his killing us. Does he love you so much he would commit murder for me? But one can find out where he lives. One can go in search of him. Now that we know that Eric is not a ghost, one can speak to him and force him to answer. Christine shook her head. No, there is nothing to be done with Eric except to run away. Then why, when you were able to run away, did you go back to him? Because I had to, and you will understand that when I tell you how I left him. Oh, I hate him, cried Raoul. And you, Christine, tell me, do you hate him too? No, said Christine simply. No, of course not. Why? You love him. Your fear, your terror, all of that is just love, and love of the most exquisite kind. The kind which people do not admit even to themselves, said Raoul bitterly. The kind that gives you a thrill when you think of it. Picture it, a man who lives in a palace underground. And he gave a leer. Then you want me to go back there? Said the young girl cruelly. Random tongue twister out of nowhere. Take care, Raoul. I have told you, you would never return. There was an appalling silence between the three of them. The two who spoke, and the shadow that listened behind them. Before answering that, said Raoul at last, speaking very slowly, I should like to know with what feeling he inspires you, since you do not hate him. With horror, she said. That is the terrible thing about it. He fills me with horror, and I do not hate him. How can I hate him, Raoul? Okay, Christina's gonna throw my voice talking this much. It's a little outside my regular register, let's be real. How can I hate him, Leroux? Think of Eric at my feet, in the house on the lake underground. He accuses himself. He curses himself. He implores my forgiveness. He confesses his cheat. He loves me. He lays at my feet an immense and tragic love. He's carried me off for love. He's imprisoned me with him underground for love. He respects me. He crawls. He moans. He weeps. And when I stood up, Raoul, I told him I could only despise him if he did not then and there give me my liberty. He offered it. He offered me to show me the mysterious road, only he rose too. I was made to remember that, though he was not an angel, nor a ghost, nor a genius, he remained the voice. He sang, and I listened and stayed. That night, we did not exchange another word. He sang me to sleep. When I woke up, I was alone, lying on a sofa in a simply furnished little bedroom, with an ordinary mahogany bedstead lit by a lamp standing on the marble top of an old Louis Philippe chest of drawers. I soon discovered that I was a prisoner, and that the only outlet from my room led to a very comfortable bathroom. On returning to the bedroom, I saw, on the chest of drawers, a note, in red ink, which said, "My dear Christine, you need have no concern as to your fate. You have no better nor more respectful friend in the world than myself. You are alone, at present, in this home which is yours. I am going out shopping to fetch you all the things that you can need." I felt sure that I had fallen into the hands of a madman. I ran round my little apartment, looking for a way of escape, which I could not find. I upbraided myself for my absurd superstition, which had caused me to fall into the trap. I felt inclined to laugh and to cry at the same time. Yeah, ordinary and mahogany in the same sentence is actual crazy talk. This was the state of mind in which Eric found me. After giving 3 taps on the wall, he walked in quietly through a door which I had not noticed, and which he left open. He had his arms full of boxes and parcels and arranged them on the bed in a leisurely fashion, while I overwhelmed him with abuse and called upon him to take off his mask. If it covered the face of an honest man. He replied serenely, "You shall never see Eric's face." He reproached me with not having finished dressing at that time of day, and he was good enough to tell me that it was 2 o'clock in the afternoon. He said he would give me half an hour, and while he spoke, wound up my watch and set it for me. After which he asked me to come to the dining room, where a nice lunch was waiting for us. I was very angry. I slammed the door in his face and went to the bathroom. When I came out again, feeling greatly refreshed, Eric said that he loved me, but that he would never tell me so except when I allowed him, and that the rest of the time would be devoted to music. "What do you mean by the rest of the time?" I asked. "5 days," he said, with decision. I asked him if I should then be free, and he said, "You will be free, Christine. For when those 5 days are past, you will have learned not to see me, and then, from time to time, you will come to see your poor Eric." He pointed to a chair opposite him, at a small table, and I sat down, feeling greatly perturbed. However, I ate a few prawns and the wing of a chicken and drank half a glass of Tokay, which he had himself, he told me, brought from the Königsberg cellars. Okay, damn, that's a spread. Opera ghosts be knowing how to set a table. Eric did not eat or drink. I asked him what his nationality was, and if that name of Eric did not point to his Scandinavian origin. He said that he had no name and no country, and that he had taken the name of Eric by accident. After lunch, he rose and gave me the tips of his fingers, saying he would like to show me over his flat. But I snatched away my hand and gave a cry. What I had touched was cold and, at the same time, bony. And I remembered that his hands smelt of death. "Oh, forgive me," he moaned, and he opened a door before me. "This is my bedroom, if you care to see it. It is rather curious." His manners, his words, his attitude gave me confidence, and I went in without hesitation. I felt as if I were entering the room of a dead person. The walls were all hung with black, but instead of the white trimmings that usually set off that funereal upholstery, there was an enormous stave of music, with the notes of Dies Irae, many times repeated. In the middle of the room was a canopy, from which hung curtains of red brocaded stuff, and under the canopy an open coffin. "That is where I sleep," said Eric. "One has to get used to everything in life, even to eternity." The sight upset me so much that I turned away my head. Then I saw the keyboard of an organ, which filled one whole side of the walls. On the desk was a music book covered with red notes. I asked leave to look at it and read, a Don Juan Triumphant. "Yes," he said, I compose sometimes. I began that work 20 years ago. When I have finished, I shall take it away with me in that coffin and never wake up again." "You must work at it as seldom as you can," I said. He replied, "I sometimes work at it for 14 days and nights together, during which I live on music only, and then I rest for years at a time. Will you play me something out of your Don Juan Triumphant?" I asked, thinking to please him. "You must never ask me that," he said in a gloomy voice. "I will play you Mozart, if you like, which will only make you weep." but my Don Juan, Christine, burns. And yet, he is not struck by fire from heaven. Thereupon, we returned to the drawing room. I noticed that there was no mirror in the whole apartment. I was going to remark upon this, but Eric had already sat down to the piano. He said, "You see, Christine, there is some music that is so terrible that it consumes all those who approach it. Fortunately, you have not come to that music yet, for you would lose all your pretty coloring and nobody would know you when you return to Paris. Let us sing something from the opera, Christine Daae." He spoke these last words as though he were flinging an insult at me. What did you do? I had no time to think about the meaning he put into his words. We at once began the duet in Othello. And already the catastrophe was upon us. I sang Desdemona. A despair, a terror, which I had never displayed before. As for him, his voice thundered forth his revengeful soul at every note. Love, jealousy, hatred burst out around us in harrowing cries. Eric's black mask made me think of the natural mask of the Moor of Venice. He was Othello himself. Suddenly, I felt a need to see beneath the mask. I wanted to know the face of the voice, and with a movement which I was utterly unable to control, swiftly my fingers tore away the mask. Oh, horror! 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 Christine stopped at the thought of the vision that had scared her. While the echoes of the night, which had repeated this name of Eric, now thrice moaned the cry, "Horror! Horror! Horror!" Raoul and Christine, clasping each other closely, raised their eyes to the stars that shone in a clear and peaceful sky. Raoul said, "Strange, Christine, that this calm, soft night should be so full of plaintive sounds. One would think that it was sorrowing with us." I think boy might be a little dim. Maybe a couple bars full of it, short of a score. When you know the secret, Raoul, your ears, like mine, will be full of lamentations. She took Raoul's protecting hands in hers and, with a long shiver, continued, "Yes. If I lived to be 100, I should always hear the superhuman cry of grief and rage which he uttered when the terrible sight appeared before my eyes. Raoul, you have seen death's heads, and they have been dried and withered by the centuries, and perhaps, if you were not the victim of a nightmare, you saw his death head at peril. And then you saw Red Death stalking about at the last masked ball. But all those death's heads were motionless, and their dumb horror was not alive. But imagine, if you can, Red Death's mask suddenly coming to life in order to express, with the 4 black holes of its eyes, its nose and its mouth, the extreme anger, the mighty fury of a demon, and not a ray of light from the sockets. For as I learned later, you cannot see his blazing eyes, except in the dark." Alright, I have used 3 snoozes, and we are still not done with this chapter. So, we are going to have to let ads run, and we'll be finishing this chapter when we return, because I do want to wrap up on the chapter, but unfortunately I can no longer snooze the ads. So, let's go ahead and set a highlight here so we know where to come back to when we're back, and we'll fire off the ads. I will finally grab some water because holy shit, Christine is talking. A lot. Alright, we'll be back in just a few minutes to continue with Phantom of the Opera. All right, we are back. I should have used that time to look forward a little bit to see how much longer this is, but we all make mistakes. So, let's continue with this chapter, this bit of a story time with Christine. I fell back against the wall, and he came up to me, grinding his teeth. And as I fell upon my knees, he hissed mad, incoherent words and curses at me. Leaning over me, he cried, Look! Look! You want to see? See! Feast your eyes! Glut your soul on my cursed ugliness! Look at Eric's face! Now, you know the face of the voice! You are not content to hear me, eh? You want to know what I looked like? Oh, you women are so inquisitive! Well, are you satisfied? I'm a very good-looking fellow, eh? When a woman has seen me, as you have, she belongs to me. She loves me forever. I am a kind of Don Juan, you know. And drawing himself up to his full height, with his hand on his hip, wagging the hideous thing that was his head on his shoulders, he roared, Look at me! I am Don Juan Triumphant! And when I turned away my head and begged for mercy, he drew it to him, brutally twisting his dead fingers into my hair. Enough! Enough! cried Raoul. I will kill him! In heaven's name, Christine, tell me where the dining room is on the lake! I must kill him! Be quiet, Raoul, if you want to know. Yes, I want to know how and why you went back. I must know! But in any case, I will kill him! Oh, Raoul, listen, listen! Dragged me by my hair, and then... It's too horrible. Well, what? Out with it! Exclaimed Raoul fiercely. Out with it, quick! Then he hissed at me. Ah, I frighten you, do I? I dare say. Perhaps you'll think that I have another mask, eh? And that this, my head, is a mask? Well, he roared, tear it off as you did the other. Come along, I insist! Your hands, give me your hands! And he seized my hands and dug them into his awful face. He tore his flesh with my nails, tore his terrible dead flesh with my nails. No, he shouted. His throat throbbed and panted like a furnace. Know that I am built up of death from head to foot, and that it is a corpse that loves you and adores you and will never, never leave you. Look, I am not laughing now, I'm crying for you, Christine, who've torn off my mask and who therefore can never leave me again. As long as you thought me handsome, you could have come back. I know you would have come back, but now that you know my hideousness, you run away for good. So, I shall keep you here. Why did you want to see me? Oh, man, Christine, who wanted to see me? My own father never saw me, and my mother, so as not to see me, made me a present of my first mask. He had let go of me, at last, and was dragging himself about on the floor, uttering terrible sobs. Then he crawled away, like a snake, and went into his room, closed the door, and left me alone to my reflections. Presently, I heard the sound of the organ, and I began to understand Eric's contemptuous phrase when he spoke about opera music. What I now heard was utterly different from what I had heard up to then. His Don Juan Triumphant, for I had not a doubt but that he had rushed to his masterpiece to forget the horror of the moment, seemed to me, at first, one long, awful, magnificent sob, but little by little, it expressed every emotion, every suffering of which mankind is capable. It intoxicated me. I opened the door that separated us. Eric rose as I entered, but dared not turn in my direction. Eric, I cried, show me your face without fear. I swear that you are the most unhappy and sublime of men, and if ever again I shiver when I look at you, it will be because I'm thinking of the splendor of your genius." Then Eric turned round. He believed me, and I also had faith in myself. He fell at my feet with words of love in his dead mouth, and the music had ceased. He kissed the hem of my dress, and did not see that I closed my eyes. What more can I tell you, dear? You now know the tragedy. It went on for a fortnight during which I lied to him. My lies were as hideous as the monster who inspired them. But they were the price of my liberty. I burned his mask, and I managed so well that even when he was not singing, he tried to catch my eye, like a dog sitting by its master. He was my faithful slave, and paid me endless little attentions. Gradually, I gave him such confidence that he ventured to take me walking on the banks of the lake and to row me in the boat on its leaden waters. Toward the end of my captivity, he let me out through the gate that closed all the underground passages in the Rue Scribe. Here, a carriage awaited us and took us into the bois. That night, when we met, you was nearly fatal to me, for he is terribly jealous of you, and I had to tell him that you were soon going away. Then, at last, after a fortnight of that horrible captivity, during which I was filled with pity, enthusiasm, despair, and horror by turns, he believed me when I said, "I will come back." "And you went back, Christine?" groaned Raoul. "Yes, dear. And I must tell you that it was not his frightful threats when setting me free that helped me to keep my word, but the harrowing sob which he gave on the threshold of the tomb. That sob attached me to the unfortunate man more than I myself suspected when saying goodbye to him. Poor Eric. Poor Eric." "Christine," said Raoul, rising, "you tell me that you love me. But you had recovered your liberty hardly a few hours before you returned to Eric. Remember the masked ball!" "Yes, and do you remember those hours which I passed with you, Raoul? To the great danger of both of us? I doubted your love for me during those hours. Do you doubt it still, Raoul? Then know that each of my visits to Eric increased my horror of him. For each of those visits, instead of calming him, as I hoped, made him mad with love. I am so frightened. You are frightened. But do you love me? If Eric were good-looking, would you love me, Christine?" She rose in her turn, put her two trembling arms round the young man's neck, and said, "Oh, my betrothed of a day, if I did not love you, I would not give you my lips. Take them, for the first time, and the last." He kissed her lips, but the night that surrounded them was rent asunder. They fled as at the approach of a storm, and their eyes, filled with dread of Eric, showed them, before they disappeared, high up above them, an immense night bird that stared at them with its blazing eyes and seemed to cling to the string of Apollo's lyre. All right, that was a very long chapter, but that will be where we wrap up for our reading tonight. But given where we are in the story, and how I've been teasing it for a little while, I have to pull it out. I'm sorry, it is unavoidable. It is time. I'm actually sitting. I think I've done a little bits and ditties here and there that were in the song, in the readings before, but I love Phantom of the Opera so much. And if you wouldn't guess it, Music of the Night is right smack dab in my range. And it's on my regular karaoke set list for personal times. So, for the first time on the channel, I am going to break out a little bit of song. But because this is obviously copywritten, I'm going to need to wrap up the YouTube stream first. So hang tight just a minute. We're going to have a closeout on YouTube. And then we'll be right back, and we'll continue the stream on Twitch for about 5 minutes or so. Just the one song. I have to. I must. Can't help myself. So, for those of you on YouTube, thanks for joining us. All of our VODs, going back to the very beginning of the channel, a year and a half or so now, are available for all time on YouTube. So, if you need some background music, that is a great place to start. Background noise, reading, whatever. Music is... There is some music, some BGM. Anyway, if you're on YouTube, a like on the stream and a subscription to the channel are a wonderful way to convince the algorithm that we do some fun things around here, and maybe send some new friends our way. If you're on Twitch, thank you very much for joining us. The Twitch side is usually where we get a little bit more interaction. There's some more chat going on. You're welcome to chat on YouTube, but the back and forth and banter is a little bit more snappy on Twitch. So, if you've joined us on Twitch, thank you. We've only been going for about 6, 7 months on Twitch so far, and we're growing our little community very nicely, and it's a good chill time. A follow is a fantastic way to keep up to date on when our streams, when our readings will be taking place. We have a reasonably stable schedule that is posted on both Bluesky and on the Twitch schedule. So, I hope that you find the time to join us at your convenience. And so, until next time, we should be reading again on Friday, I believe. Until next time, I hope you have a lovely evening, and we'll be signing off on YouTube here. If you're on Twitch, hang tight. We'll be back just after this for a last little encore.